Aima. A silent night, snowflakes drifted gently to the ground, turning the small village of Hearthfield into a picture-perfect postcard. Twinkling lights adorned the shops and homes, wreaths hung from every door, and the scent of cinnamon, pine, and roasted chestnuts filled the air. Children laughed as they built snowmen, their cheeks flushed with cold. It was Christmas Eve, and the world seemed wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and joy. But Arthur Grayson knew better. He stood on the edge of the village square, his gloved hand resting on the hilt of his long silver dagger. His eyes scanned the cheerful crowd with the practiced precision of a predator. The shadows cast by the gaslights were just a bit too dark. The air was just a bit too cold. And the laughter, though cheerful, carried a faint underlying note of unease. The village was celebrating Christmas, but darkness lingered on the fringes. Arthur turned to his sister, Clara, who stood beside him with a crossbow hidden beneath her long, fur-lined coat. Her pale blue eyes mirrored his own steely resolve. "Something's here," Arthur muttered. "I can feel it." Clara nodded. They always come when people are at their happiest. Easier to hide behind the joy. Arthur's jaw tightened. The Graysons had been hunting vampires for generations. It was their curse, their duty, and their damnation. The creatures of the night despised Christmas, despised the light, the faith, and the hope it brought. Yet they hunted during this season more than any other, driven by a bitter hatred to extinguish that light. This year, Arthur and Clara were determined to stop them before they could feast. A bell rang out from the old stone chapel, and the crowd erupted into song. Voices rose in harmony, filling the night with carols. For a moment, Arthur let the melody wash over him, but then he saw it, a flicker of movement in the shadows by the chapel's entrance. His eyes narrowed. Clara, there, the second stained glass hunter. They moved swiftly, blending into the crowd, their steps soundless on the snow-dusted cobblestones. The chapel's entrance loomed ahead, framed by two towering stone angels, whose eyes seemed to watch everything with eternal sorrow. Arthur slipped inside, the warmth of the chapel immediately contrasting the chill outside. Rows of pews stood in solemn lines, and a massive stained glass window cast fragments of red, blue, and gold light onto the stone floor. Candles flickered at the altar, and the scent of incense curled through the air. It should have felt holy, safe. Instead, Arthur's skin prickled with dread. Clara entered behind him, her grip tight on her crossbow. They moved forward cautiously, the wooden floor creaking beneath their boots. The flickering candlelight played tricks with the shadows, making it difficult to tell what was real. Then they saw her. A young woman sat in the front pew, her back to them, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore a thin crimson dress that seemed out of place for the cold weather. Her shoulders trembled, as though she were crying. Arthur exchanged a glance with Clara. They knew better than to trust appearances. "Miss?" Arthur called softly. The woman didn't respond. Clara raised her crossbow, her voice low and steady. "Turn around." The woman's sobbing stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, with an eerie, fluid motion, she turned to face them. Her eyes were like shards of black glass, reflecting nothing but hunger. Her lips curled into a smile, revealing elongated, razor-sharp fangs. Her skin was deathly pale, her cheeks sunken, and a thin trail of blood ran from the corner of her mouth. "Happy Christmas," she whispered, her voice dripping with mockery. Arthur lunged, the dance of death. The vampire moved like liquid shadow, slipping between Arthur's strikes with supernatural grace. Her laughter echoed through the chapel, a cruel and hollow sound. "Is this all the Graysons have left?" she taunted, dodging another blow. "You're slower than your father was." Arthur's vision blurred with rage. The memory of his father's lifeless body, drained and left like a discarded husk, burned in his mind. He swung again, his silver dagger slicing through the air, missing by inches. The vampire hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You should have stayed home by the fire." "Sorry," Arthur growled. "I'm not much for caroling." The vampire lunged, but before she could reach him, Clara's crossbow twanged. The silver-tipped bolt buried itself into the vampire's shoulder. She shrieked, the sound high and inhuman. her body convulsing as smoke sizzled from the wound. "Got you," Clara whispered. Arthur didn't hesitate. He surged forward, plunging his dagger into the vampire's chest. Her eyes widened, her mouth opening in a silent scream. She collapsed to the floor, her body disintegrating into a cloud of ash that scattered like dark snowflakes. The chapel fell silent. Arthur's